Hi everybody, how you doing? Me once again. Hope everybody's doing well. I hope you're safe and healthy. I hope you're making the most of what we have to work with during this very unusual time. Okay, let's get to the homework that I asked you to do. I gave all of you um, 3 different essays to read in the opinion section of the Times, and I asked you to tell me which essay you think had the most effective introduction. And I got some very interesting answers. So let's just go over what we got and take a look at the introductions that we read. 2 of you said that the essay "Let's Kick Coronavirus's Ass" had the most effective introduction. This was an essay by Maureen Dowd. She's a pretty famous essayist. And her essay began this way: "It's no wonder that watching Andrew Cuomo's daily briefings can make some people crave Chianti and meatballs. Besides coolly explaining the facts in this terrifying and stultifying plague season, the governor of New York evokes the feeling of a big Italian family dinner, and that is the intended effect." I thought this was a pretty good introduction. First of all, you need to know who Andrew Cuomo is. One of you said you didn't like this introduction because you didn't know who Andrew Cuomo is. Andrew Cuomo is the governor of New York, and he is giving a daily press briefing, much the way President Trump is, but Governor Cuomo is being praised for giving press conferences that really give more of the facts about what's going on, about kind of facing the facts head on, but telling people it's going to be terrible, but it's going to be okay. He says in the next paragraph, he says, "Call it psychological," Governor Cuomo, phoning from Albany, tells me. "Call it feelings, call it emotions, but this is as much a social crisis as a health crisis." And this was something that Dowd reflected in her introduction to the piece, I thought, especially when she mentions that his daily briefings can make some people crave Chianti and meatballs, and that it evokes a feeling of a big Italian family dinner table. If you've ever had the pleasure of sitting at a big Italian family dinner table, and I think at least a couple of you had, you know what it's like. It's lots of tremendous food. It's a big family. It can be loud. It can be boisterous. It can be warm, but it's a place where everyone feels included, and everyone feels safe, and everyone feels loved. And that being what Governor Cuomo says that he's going for in his press conferences, it's really a very good image to conjure to write an article about Governor Cuomo trying to invoke similar feelings in his press conference. And this is what a couple of you said about it. One of you said, "I thought the Let's Kick Coronavirus's Ass essay was the most effective as a reader because it made the idea of Governor Cuomo's addresses about the virus make them seem cool, calm, and collected. Where there are a lot of answered questions and confusion, relatability and center-headedness makes it easier to digest." I don't quite understand that whole sentence, to be frank with you, but yes, where there's a lot of answered questions and relatability and center-headedness, yeah, makes it easy to digest. It makes his press conferences feel like they're somewhere you want to be at a time of trouble like this. So yes, that's what this person said. Someone else said, "The introduction talked about Governor Andrew Cuomo's daily briefings on the pandemic and how he calmly explains the condition of his state and makes people feel comfortable like they are at, quote, a big Italian family dinner table. I found this introduction most appealing because as someone who hasn't watched any of these briefings, it made me want to keep reading to find out how these briefings have made people feel better about this terrible pandemic and how his empathetic voice is growing people's support in him, along with wanting to learn more about Cuomo in general, which the author explains in the rest of the article. So it sounds to me like what this person is saying is that Governor Cuomo almost becomes a character, like a character in a story. And it makes you want to learn, making you want to learn more about him makes you want to read more of the article, which again is the purpose, the chief goal of an introduction is to convince the reader to keep reading, okay? Two of you, I think two, do I have my papers out of order? Yes, I do. Two of you thought that the essay Rational Panic, but also Rational Hope had the best introduction or the most effective introduction for you to read the beginning of that article. For far too long, America's response to the coronavirus lacked what you might call rational panic. From the experts to the markets to the president and his cable television court, an irrational calm prevailed when a general freakout might have prepared us for the crisis. Today, at least, we have panic in surplus, however unevenly distributed and still insufficient in some places. But now we need something else to leaven it. Along with rational panic, we need sources of rational hope. Let's see what people said about that one. The article, Rational Panic, but also Rational Hope, really stood out to me because this was something that everyone can relate to right now because everyone is at a loss, I guess, and panic of what's going on and how things are going to be from here on out. They stated very clearly that everyone is going through this struggle, and even though we are still needed, they stated very early that everyone is going through this struggle, and even though we still need to look out for the hope that there still is. So, yeah, nice. Someone else said in very small print, which I should have enlarged, but I didn't. I think the article Rational Panic, but also Rational Hope had the most effective introduction. It made sense. It was relevant to what the issue is, and it didn't drag out the point. Me as a reader, I prefer when articles get right to the point with maybe a little background information, not a whole extra introduction that relates to the rest of the point. That's what I found the most appealing. Okay, so I agree with both of those. Of the three essays, I thought that this article was really the most direct, the most to the point, as one of the readers says. Of the three articles, this one certainly seemed to me to be closest to the kind of introductions that you will write for most of your academic career. It's the most academic. It is no nonsense. It is not casual like the one about Governor Cuomo and the big Italian dinner table. It is not poetic, which is what we're going to see in the next one. It is direct and to the point. For far too long, we've had rational panic when a general freakout might have prepared us for the crisis. Today, we have lots of panic, but now we need something else to leaven it, to even it out. Along with rational panic, we need sources of rational hope. That's a direct, to the point introduction. It makes a lot of sense, and it makes me want to keep reading. I understand what it means to compare rational panic and rational hope, but it makes me as a reader think, oh, rational hope. I'd love some rational hope right about now. And what do you mean, Ross Dutat, by rational hope? And as a reader, you keep reading. So I thought that introduction was effective as well. I'm trying to get my papers in order here. Several of you, however, most of you preferred the introduction to the essay, Silent Spring is Saying Something. let me read some of this. And I'll probably go past what might officially be the introduction, but let me just go ahead. This is the silent spring. The planet has gone quiet, so quiet you can almost hear it whirling around the sun, feel its smallness, picture for once the loneliness and fleetingness of being alive. This is the spring of fears, a scratchy throat, a sniffle, and the mind races. I see a single rat ambling around at dusk on Front Street in Brooklyn, a garbage bag ripped open by a dog, and experience an apocalyptic vision of vermin and filth. Scattered masked pedestrians on empty streets look like the survivors of a neutron bomb. A pathogen about 1,000th the width of a human hair, the spiky crowned new coronavirus has upended civilization and unleashed the imagination. That's probably where you can stop and call that the introduction, but let me read a little more. From my window, gazing across the East River, I see a car pass now and then on FDR Drive. The volume of traffic reminds me of standing on the Malecon, the seafront promenade in Havana a dozen years ago, and watching a couple of cars a minute pass. But that was Cuba, and those were finned 50s beauties. It's a time of total reset. In France, there's a website to indicate to people the 1 kilometer radius from their homes in which they are permitted to exercise. That's one measure of everyone's shrunken worlds. This is breathtaking. And I'm not saying that it's a better introduction than the other two. I'm just saying it is a breathtaking piece of writing if you look at what it's doing in terms of its imagery. But you know what? Let me let you know what some of you said about it, and then we'll talk about how it works. One person said, the most effective introduction to me was A Silent Spring is Saying Something for its use of description and prose. I'm often fond of descriptive paragraphs that truly draw me into what the author is trying to say, and I think that this article best conveys that preference. It's filled with imagery of the panic that is set about among the world, and the use of adjectives only helps paint a better picture for the reader to immerse themselves in. The emotional tone of it carried when depicting the state of the world and the loneliness and isolation felt by everyone. Even mundane tasks become a thrill, as all communication has been cut off with everyone. The result of the article was just as captivating as the introduction, and it was a strong piece of journalism. I thought it was rather refined, and the author had a way of describing things in a fashion that was long-winded or boring. I think this person meant not long-winded or boring. It was a good blend of informative and prose that I found myself genuinely intrigued to keep reading onward. So yeah, good observation. Another person said, I think the introduction for A Silent Spring is Saying Something was the most impactful because of how descriptive it was. It really caught my attention, and I imagined what he was saying. Okay, and another person said, out of the 3 essays, I thought that A Silent Spring is Saying Something had the most effective introduction. I like this introduction because it's interesting and grabs my attention. It's ironic spring, a time known for partying and breaks, has become quiet because of the crisis. Was that it? Was there one more? Oh yeah, there's one more. Another person said, as a reader, after reading all 3, I found A Silent Spring is Saying Something the most intriguing due to the fact that it started out giving the reader a vision of what's going on and painting an eerie picture that pulls the reader in. I agree with that. I agree with all of those. I actually agree with all of your observations. Just to get back for a moment to the discussion of this introduction, it's very poetic. It's in that it uses imagery and the words that are capturing that imagery to convey its point, to draw the reader in. It's using an amazing juxtaposition of images. Juxtaposition is when you hold one thing up against another and you kind of, you either compare them or you just hold them up next to each other for effect, for like emotional effect. The planet has gone quiet, so quiet you can almost hear it whirling around the sun, feel its smallness. So we're starting out literally with the planet Earth whirling around the sun, and the next paragraph, a scratchy throat, a sniffle, and the mind races. If you haven't experienced this, I'm sure someone you know has, where they sneeze and they're terrified. I see a single rat ambling around at dusk on Front Street in Brooklyn, a garbage bag ripped open by a dog, and experience an apocalyptic vision of vermin and filth. So we've gone from the earth whirling around the sun to these visions of a rat and a dog in the street, and picturing this apocalyptic vision of wild animals roaming the streets. He mentions scattered masked pedestrians on empty streets look like survivors of a neutron bomb. If you don't know what a neutron bomb is, it is a bomb that kills all the living things but leaves the buildings standing. And it was developed so that you could drop it on your enemy, kill your enemy, but leave all the buildings standing, so then you can go in and use all the buildings. And then he mentions the traffic on the FDR Drive, and he compares it to the Malecon, the seafront promenade in Havana, which is just a long street that runs along the coast of Havana, and watching a couple of cars a minute pass. But that was Cuba, and those were finned 1950s beauties. He's referring to the cars. In Cuba, they drive a lot of older cars with the, the fins on the tail fins on the cars. And then he compares Cuba to France. It's a time of total reset. In France, there's a website to indicate to people where they can exercise around their homes. So he's doing a lot of imagery, a lot of juxtaposition, and he's painting a word picture to draw you in. He's painting a word picture in a very beautifully worded, poetic fashion to draw you into the piece. And as you saw, I kept reading after the introduction, so it accomplished its goal as well. I've told you before that writing is an infinite series of choices. The way you choose to introduce your paper is perhaps maybe the most important point, or rather the most important choice that you have to make. After choosing your thesis, it may be the most important point, because you need a thesis to write a good paper. You need a strong thesis to write a strong essay. I think we've established that by now. So you have a strong thesis. The way you introduce your essay to your reader may be your most important choice after that. How you do it is up to you. It's up to, as we've said, what is your thesis? How are you presenting it? What is the tone, the language, the structure, the arguments that you use to prove and convey your thesis? And what way might be the best to hook someone into that? I think each of these authors, when writing their introductions, took all that into account. One author was talking about Governor Andrew Cuomo's press conferences, and wanted to convey what they and he were like to the audience. And the image that she came up with was a big Italian dinner. Governor Andrew Cuomo is the son of Mario Cuomo, who also served as the governor of New York years and years ago. And Governor Mario Cuomo made a big deal about his Italian heritage. He was not shy about talking about it and referring to it. His father, his family came from Italy. His father opened a little grocery store in Queens, and that's how the family made its living. It was a very traditional immigrant Italian American family. And that's what Maureen Dowd went for when she chose her opening. She thought, okay, what are his press conferences like? Big Italian dinner. How can I use that to introduce it? And that's what she did. Russ Dutat was in the Rational Panic, but also Rational Hope. He was clearly writing an essay that compared the two, Rational Panic and Rational Hope, what might be the best way to draw a reader into that. It's by comparing the two. We've had a lot of rational, what he says is we've lacked Rational Panic. Now we have a lot of panic on hand. Maybe now we need Rational Hope. It's pretty straightforward, called for a pretty straightforward introduction that introduced you to those two concepts, Rational Panic and Rational Hope. Roger Cohen's essay, he wanted to paint a picture of what it was like. Clearly, he was writing from a much more personal, emotional place. And he expressed that in a very creative, poetic way to introduce his essay about a silent spring. So at this point, no matter which introduction you liked, we can recognize how the authors tailored those introductions for the essays they wrote. I promise you that when they sat down and drafted those essays, however they started it in their very first draft, did not look at all like the introduction they wound up with after they had completed their final revision and handed it in to their editor at the Times. So again, my best advice to you, get writing your draft whatever way starts you writing. And if you need to start every draft you ever write with, there are a lot of problems in the world. Some problems are this, and this, but this problem is, and then you write about whatever you're writing about. That's fine. If that's the way you need to introduce every draft you ever write, that's fine. Then when you're done with the essay and you see what it is, and you see how you've conveyed your point and how you've made your argument, that's the time to go back and cut out all that nonsense that I just said and revise it by writing a draft that best fits the rest of your paper. All right, so when you sit down to write the next draft, which will be essay 3, which I'm going to assign to you on Monday, when you sit down to write that draft, don't get hung up with, I don't know where to start. Start anywhere. You'll have a thesis. Start proving your thesis. When you're done, go back and write the introduction. Okay? So that's going to be it for today. There is a homework assignment that should be available and visible to you now on Blackboard. As I said, on Monday, I'll assign essay 3, and we'll start working on your thesis for that essay. And yeah, we'll go from there. So if any of you have any questions or problems or anything, be sure to let me know at that address, mruscoe english112@gmail.com. And I almost forgot, you need an attendance question for today. The attendance question for today will be, who is the governor of Michigan? the governor of the great state of Michigan. That person has been in the news a lot lately, but you can find that person's name just by doing a quick Google search. Who is the governor of the state of Michigan? Okay, email that to me here. Right, you all see that? You've all been emailing me here. I did have one person email me an answer to an attendance question to my Southern account. Please email it to me here, because my Southern account, as you might imagine, is being bombarded by school administration as administration and faculty tries to work out, you know, what we're doing this semester, because it has been, you know, it's been a challenge for everyone. It's a challenge, you know, it's a challenge for everyone. It's certainly a challenge for you. I would not have wished this upon you, certainly during your freshman year, because freshman year, you know, I would have, everyone would have preferred this not to have happened, but certainly freshman year is a good time to put in a full year on campus and really get used to being what a college student is. You know, I feel bad for the freshmen. I feel bad for the seniors. You know, you work 4 years at college to get your degree, and, you know, this is how it's ending, and they don't know when or if they're going to hold graduation. The school has been adamant in saying that they will have graduation in some form. But again, a lot of us are having to make this up on the fly too, because we have, you know, I've been teaching for 31 years. I've never seen anything like this before, and really neither has anyone else. So thank you for all the work that you're putting in to keep up with everything. And we're just all gonna pull together and do our best and support each other. And again, if you have any questions, problems, anything, where's my email address? Feel free to email me. If I can't answer your question by email, we'll set up a time to talk either by Skype or by phone. All right, that's it. Check your homework. You've got homework for Monday, and I will see you on YouTube again then. All right, thanks. Have a great weekend. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.